What's up, guys? Welcome to my long-awaited rewrite for Michael Bay's 2011 film Transformers: Dark of the Moon. This video has been my most requested video for 2 years straight now, and I'm excited to finally get around to continuing this series. Thankfully, I had the Dark Lord help me out as a co-writer on this, and his insight helped reach this series completion. For those of you who may be new to this channel, this video is part of an ongoing series where I am rewriting the entire live-action Transformers film saga to help them reach their full creative potential. Now, I want to be clear in stating that this video is in no way meant to elevate myself as a better writer or filmmaker than Michael Bay, Aaron Kruger, or anyone else involved in the making of this film. Dark of the Moon was actually my gateway introduction into the Transformers franchise as a whole, and from there, I watched the rest of the Bayverse films, then fell in love with the G1 series, and later on did the same thing with a Transformers Prime TV show that just happened to be airing at the same time. So, Transformers has been near and dear to my heart for over a decade now, and Dark of the Moon, to this day, still remains as one of my favorite films, and I personally think that it is the strongest installment out of the entire Bayverse film saga. So with that being said, this rewrite is really just a fun writing exercise for me that allows me the opportunity to experiment as a writer and work with a franchise that I have known and loved for years. I always try to keep my rewrites as realistic and as fair as possible, so I give myself rules, and I always try to work within the same restrictions and guidelines that the original writers had to help show that this version of the story could have plausibly existed in real life. I'm not going to do a complete overhaul of the script. I'm going to work with the same amount of both human and Transformer characters the original film had, where we had 7 major human characters and around 11 to 12 Autobot characters. Wheelie and Brains were completely removed from my rewrites since all they did was provide comedic relief, and we already have comedic relief with Shia LaBeouf in the role of Spike, so Brains and Wheelie were just cluttering up the cast. The plot of a secret Decepticon invasion of Earth will mostly stay intact, and I'll still be working within the film's original themes of faith and perseverance. Now, Dark of the Moon took inspiration from 2 episodes of the original 80s G1 cartoon, which were called The Ultimate Doom Part 3 and Megatron's Master Plan Parts 1 and 2. So I'm going to pull reference from those episodes as well, except my version of this film's title will pull reference from the Iron Man films, and the title will just be Transformers 3, no other subtitle attached to it. For this rewrite, I'm going to split it up into 3 videos, where each video will be dedicated to one act of this film. So naturally, this video will cover Act 1. I've already done rewrites for the first 2 Transformers films, but if you guys haven't seen those previous videos, then be sure to check out the links in the description below so that you can get caught up to speed with this rewrite. But if for whatever reason you don't have time to watch those other videos, or maybe it's just been a while since you last saw them and you need a refresher, here's a quick recap of what happened in the first 2 Transformers rewrites. But if you're all caught up and you don't need a recap, then you can skip to this time in the video. The first Transformers film pretty much went down the exact same way that the original film did, except for the fact that Sam Witwicky was renamed Spike Witwicky, his father Ron was renamed Sparkplug, and both Judy and Michaela, along with the hackers Glenn and Maggie, were completely removed from the story. Everyone in Lennox's team of Rangers survive in this version except for Fig. Also, Megatron survives the events of this film to help him build some credibility as an effective antagonist. The majority of the plot pretty much went down the same way, except it was more focused on the father-son dynamic between Spike and Sparkplug, and that relationship was the emotional core of the story, rather than the romance between Sam and Michaela. There was also some more time dedicated to fleshing out the Autobot and Decepticon characters. My second rewrite is where a lot of the changes really took place. In my rewrite of Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the Decepticons dig up an abandoned star harvester in the pyramids of Peru to help them harvest the Earth's sun and use its energy as a fuel source in their efforts to invade Earth. This is all part of Megatron's contingency plan to resurrect his home planet by enslaving Earth. The Autobots from the previous film, who have been joined by a new wave of Autobot reinforcements, have allied themselves with Nest to protect Earth from the Decepticons. But when Optimus Prime is fatally wounded in battle and incapacitated, Bumblebee steps up as the temporary leader of the Autobots, and his character arc focused on B dealing with the brutal burdens of leadership. Thus, Bumblebee became the main protagonist in my version of Transformers 2, and he leads a combined team of Autobots and human Nest agents on a quest to destroy the Star Harvester. Another major supporting character who was introduced in this rewrite was Chip, a genius scientist who works as the head of Nest's science division and becomes friends with both Spike and Bumblebee. In the final battle of the rewrite, both the Autobots and the Decepticons experience major casualties, and the Autobots manage to blow up the Star Harvester, but not before the Decepticons succeed in acquiring all of the energon they need to carry out their invasion plan. Starscream leaves Megatron behind and allows him to be captured by the Autobots, resulting in Starscream's ascension as Lord of the Decepticons, while Megatron is transported to Nest's headquarters known as Autobot City. Optimus Prime makes a full recovery, and he promotes B to the rank of Sergeant, while Spike is recruited as a Nest agent by Marissa Fairborn, the director of Nest. Meanwhile, Starscream uses some of the collected energon to reactivate the secret army of Decepticons hidden away on Earth's moon, their leader being none other than Shockwave. Okay, now that we got that squared away, let's move on with the first part of this rewrite, the exposition, which is where we establish the status quo of our protagonists. Act 1. The exposition. We open on the same prologue as the original film, where Optimus Prime narrates over the film's opening battle as Sentinel Prime attempts to escape Cybertron with the space bridge. That prologue will remain mostly the same. The only thing I would want to add would be a few cool cameos of other G1 Autobots who don't appear in this rewrite series, such as Gears, Windcharger, and Bluestreak. They all serve Sentinel Prime as his crew aboard the Ark, and we'll hear Sentinel call them out by name as he gives out commands. We can then show the damaged Ark crash landing on Earth's moon, and instead of the United States astronauts being the ones to investigate the crash site, it will be astronauts from the USSR. The reason why I'm removing all of the US government involvement and secrecy surrounding the Ark is because despite how cool of a concept it is to have the Transformers be the center of a sci-fi conspiracy thriller, there just wasn't any setup for it in the previous Transformers films. My own rewrites followed a more space opera approach to the Bayverse, so by default, that means we just can't have a conspiracy thriller come out of left field for the third film. If you want to have your characters carry out an intricate plot that fools both the protagonist and the audience with gripping plot twists in the third installment of your series, then you really need to lay out the groundwork ahead of time in previous installments. You can't just throw in a random conspiracy and expect the audiences to believe it because somebody, somewhere along the line in the story should have caught on to the hints and signs. Anyways, after the prologue, we cut to Washington, D.C. in the present day. At an abandoned construction site, we see a pair of scavengers known as the Geddes brothers waiting impatiently and cautiously looking over their shoulders as they stand next to a stack of cases. Two black cars and a motorcycle pull into the construction site, and a squad of mobsters escort their Don, a crime lord by the name of Victor Drath, to the meeting. Fun fact, both Victor Drath and the Geddes brothers are human villains from the original Transformers G1 show. The Geddes brothers open up the cases and reveal a cache of guns armed with illegal Cybertronian upgrades and modifications. This is an arms deal. From a distance, a squad of Nest agents scout out the perimeter and observe the exchange. This squad is made up of Lennox, Epps, Donnelly, and Burke, our original founding members of Nest. But they have a new addition to the squad. Spike is accompanying them, outfitted in ballistic armor just like the rest of the agents. In the original Transformers rewrite, I had Lennox's team fulfill the 5-man band team archetype by having Lennox be the leader, Epps the lancer, Burke the big guy, Donnelly the smart guy, and Fig as the heart. But after Fig's death in the Transformers 1 rewrite, a slot has been opened on the team. A slot that is now fulfilled by Spike as the heart of the 5-man band. After surviving 2 campaigns against the Decepticons, Lennox and his team have been promoted as the de facto response team at Nest, working under the codename Team Goldbug. This mission is Spike's final test in his Nest training, and he asks Lennox if he thinks that they'll need reinforcements for this mission. Lennox reminds Spike that their reinforcements need to remain incognito for as long as possible and should only be called upon when absolutely necessary. Spike acknowledges the command, and, on his signal, Team Goldbug will move in to bust the arms deal, which results in an immediate firefight. But the scales suddenly tip into the criminals' favor as both the Geddes brothers and Drath's men use the Cybertronian guns on Team Goldbug, allowing a regular human assault rifle to pack a punch as heavy as an Autobot RPG. Spike and his team immediately take cover as massive bolts of energy roar past them, and Spike signals their reinforcements to move in. A pair of Gatling guns suddenly pop out of the hoods of Drath's 2 black cars, and the cars start to drive themselves in donuts as they open fire on Drath's men. A huge cloud of dust is conjured up thanks to the circular driving, obscuring the battlefield. Through the dust and smoke, We hear the iconic sound of Cybertronians transforming as Bumblebee and Mirage emerge from the smokescreen, wearing black paint jobs and scanning the battlefield with their infrared optic sensors as they begin selecting any survivors of their onslaught. Victor Drath himself will be one of the survivors, and he instantly tries to flee the scene by crawling over to the motorcycle and riding off. But the bike suddenly slams on the brakes by itself, and the momentum hurls Drath from the seat. The dark motorcycle transforms into RC, also wearing a coat of black paint, as she holds the mobster at gunpoint. RC will corral the terrified criminals and hold them captive while Team Goldbug secures the weapons cache and loads them up into the trunk of Mirage's vehicle mode. Bumblebee, now a sergeant, will compliment his scouts on their performance and give them words of encouragement and some constructive feedback before ordering them to return back to base. This scene is important because this is the first time we've seen Bumblebee operating as a leader since his last hurrah in the Transformers 2 rewrite. B has grown and matured emotionally since the last time we've seen him. He's much more comfortable and confident with his new station as sergeant. Being a low-ranking leader seems to have a much more positive effect on Bumblebee than when he was a high-ranking leader. Lennox will also congratulate Spike on a job well done and tell him that he's passed the test. Once Team Goldbug returns to Autobot City with their cargo, B and his scouts will scan models of their original vehicle modes and then receive a paint job to get their iconic color schemes back. Spike and the rest of Nest's mechanics will be the ones painting the Autobots while they remain in their vehicle modes in the garage. Even though Spike is now a field agent for Nest, his primary responsibilities at Autobot City revolve around him being a mechanic, like how US Marines will pull double duty and specialize in other areas outside of combat. While Spike leads the paint crew working on Bumblebee, we see Spike's dad Sparkplug walk out onto the floor of the garage with a crew of mechanics, and they'll begin working on Mirage and RC. Like Spike, Sparkplug now works for Nest as a mechanic as well, thanks to Lennox pulling some strings for the old war veteran. While Spike and B chat about the mission and crack jokes with each other, everyone will hear Wheeljack's voice excitedly announce over the intercom that he has some new upgrades for Optimus and Ironhide and requests their presence at the training grounds for a test run. Meanwhile, we'll see a group of Nest agents training with Ratchet, the same drill that we see the Nest soldiers practicing with Bumblebee in the original version of Dark of the Moon, which will be kept for this rewrite, except it's going to be slightly altered. The drill will be hosted by Epps, while Lennox will lead a group of robotics students from MIT University as their no-nonsense tour guide, as he gives them an exclusive and never-before-seen look at Autobot City. Director Fairborn will make it a point to meet with the group and shake hands with the class's professor, Dr. Henry Arkaville, whom she respects as a colleague. Dr. Arkaville will then take a moment to introduce his intern, a blonde girl named Carly, to Director Fairborn. For this rewrite, Dylan Gould's role in the story as a secondary human antagonist and as Carly's mentor will be replaced by Dr. Henry Arkaville, who will be played by John Malkovich, who was already a member of this film's original cast. You could potentially have another actor like Ed Harris, Bill Nighy, or Gary Oldman play Dr. Arkaville, but since you already have John Malkovich in this movie and he's known for playing villains, why pass up the opportunity? My personal preference for casting in this role would be David Bradley, but John Malkovich is a very strong choice as well, so in the end it's tomato. Anyways, Dr. Arkaville will be a part-time robotics professor at MIT, having been a former mentor of Chip's. In fact, it was Dr. Arkaville who recommended Chip to Nest in the first place back when the organization was first being mobilized. Carly will currently be one of Arkaville's top students in the class, and an intern at his robotics company, Arkaville Appliances, an organization that is well respected for its collaboration projects with NASA. Like Chip before her, Carly is Dr. Arkaville's current protege, and is being groomed to become another leader in the robotics industry. Ever since the Cybertronians were exposed to the public back in the Transformers 1 rewrite, Dr. Arkaville has served as an advisor to the US Department of Defense. He was recruited by the government for his expertise in robotics, and he also had a hand in creating the Alien Autobot Cooperation Act, the legal document that serves as the official alliance between the people of Earth and the Autobots. Thanks to the advanced science of the Cybertronians, Dr. Arkaville in recent years has made an evolutionary breakthrough in prosthetics when he used Cybertronian technology to develop robotic prosthetics for amputees and disabled veterans. His first model was tested on himself, replacing the plastic prosthetic on his right arm with a fully automated Cybertronian arm. While Epps and Ratchet are in the middle of performing their combat demonstration to the class, Carly will give Spike an adorable sidelong glance during the presentation. She'll find a reason to get close to him and casually bump into him and pretend that it was an accident just so she can chat with him for a bit. We instantly get the understanding that these two are close. Carly will enthusiastically whisper and ask Spike if he passed his test, and when he says that he did, Carly contains her excitement and tells Spike that they're going to celebrate by going to dinner with his dad before she quickly rejoins the tour group. As a quick side note, since my version of Carly in this rewrite doesn't really fit into Rosie Huntington-Whiteley's acting range, I think somebody like Teresa Palmer or Alyssa Rulin would have been a better fit for the role of Carly back when Dark of the Moon came out in 2011, since both actresses are roughly around the same age as Shia LaBeouf and Dave Franco, who play Spike and Chip respectively, and all three characters were around the same age back in the original G1 cartoon. Director Fairborn will excuse herself from the MIT tour group to carry on with her duties, while Lennox takes the group out to the training grounds to witness Optimus and Ironhide testing out their upgrades with Wheeljack and Chip. Dr. Arkeville and Chip will share a brief reunion, while Wheeljack eagerly explains his upgrades to the robotic students. Wheeljack will describe how he modified Ironhide's heavy minigun that he got in the last film by calibrating it so that it can now transform into a motor whenever Ironhide needs to use heavy artillery at a long distance. It also got an additional upgrade in the form of a flamethrower being added to it for when Ironhide finds himself in close quarter combat with multiple enemies. I think it's really important to show that the Cybertronians are a people who put a lot of emphasis on the act of transformation itself. I know that sounds obvious because the name of the series is Transformers, but how often in Transformers lore do we actually see only the Cybertronians themselves transforming? I think it would actually be awesome to see that the very idea of transfiguration, the act of transforming, is something that the Cybertronians base a lot of their culture on. They see it as an art and as a way of life. So it only makes sense that the Cybertronians' technology, their weapons, their equipment, and even their architecture, like their spaceships, their buildings, and their bridges, transform just as much as the Cybertronians' physical bodies do. Showing that the Cybertronians' weaponry transforms into different modes, like the Cybertronians themselves, is a small detail that I think will go a long way in selling the idea that transforming is a fundamental way of life for these people. So, after Ironhide gets a chance to play around with his new toy, Optimus will take a second to politely introduce himself to the tour group before testing out the invention Wheeljack and Chip have crafted for him, which will be none other than the semi-trailer from the original film that transforms into a battle station complete with an entire arsenal of both firearms and melee weapons. Optimus will amaze the college students when he shoulders on the jetpack and majestically soars through an aerial obstacle course as a test flight. After the test flight, one of the MIT students will ask Lennox if Megatron is being held prisoner at Autobot City. Lennox will neither confirm nor deny the presence of Megatron, to which another student will ask why Nest spared the Lord of the Decepticons and captured him rather than just execute him. Lennox will report that Earth's world leaders want Megatron to stand trial for all of his war crimes that he has committed against them, and he also states that keeping the leader of the enemy faction as a hostage is a useful bargaining tool when it comes to negotiations for peace. A student will pipe up and ask Lennox if he thinks the war with the Decepticons will end soon, to which Lennox replies, "I sure hope so, kid." As Lennox discusses Megatron's fate with the tourists, we'll cut to the prison of Autobot City, where Director Fairborn oversees Victor Drath and the Geddes brothers being escorted to their cells by a squad of Nest agents. Afterwards, she'll stop by Megatron's cell. Megatron, who is still missing his arm that was cut off in the last film, is moodily slouched against the holding cell made entirely of energy. The Wreckers and their pet Steeljaw will stand guard around the cell, taunting and mocking the disgraced warlord. Director Fairborn will ask the Wreckers if Megatron has agreed to speak with them yet. He hasn't. Fairborn will then address Megatron directly, and she tells him that it would be in his best interest to cooperate with them, since, without their leader, the Decepticons are bound to lose this war with Earth very soon. Megatron will then chuckle before standing up and towering over the insignificant little human. He'll then tell her ominously, "You have no idea what is coming, parasite." We then cut to the dark side of the moon, where the Nemesis, the Decepticons' base of operations, is cloaked in shadow. The Decepticons will host a war council on the Nemesis, and Starscream will ask his officers for a progress report. Those officers include Soundwave, Shockwave, Rumble, and Ratbat, the latter two Decepticons having been awoken from stasis as members of Shockwave's crew, but they now serve Soundwave directly as his assistants and as sergeants in the Decepticon army. Laserbeak will be present too, perched on Soundwave's shoulder like a creepy vulture. Starscream, as the new lord of the Decepticons, will walk around the Nemesis carrying the fallen staff like a scepter. Since Starscream is not a Prime, he cannot access the awesome power within the staff. So, he resorts to making it a badge of office for his new position as Overlord of the Decepticons. This is something Shockwave will question Starscream about during the War Council, since he is unable to comprehend the logic behind Starscream's decision to claim such a useless weapon. Shockwave compares it to owning an empty gun that possesses no ammunition. It's pointless and counterproductive. But Starscream, in his pride, will respond, "I do not require you to understand my decrees, Shockwave. I only require you to serve them." Shockwave will then promptly respond,
"I serve only logic."
The atmosphere in the council room will grow tense as Shockwave and Starscream stare at each other. Shockwave will then break the silence by going on to question Starscream some more about the logistics of their invasion, and when Shockwave points out that Starscream made some major miscalculations in his battle plans, Starscream just swipes it under the rug and pretends like nothing is wrong. Once the council is dismissed, Soundwave will approach Shockwave, and the two of them will agree that Starscream's incompetence is sabotaging the invasion, and that the only reason the Decepticons have gotten this far along in their plans is because of how effective Shockwave and Soundwave are as individuals, despite being led by a poor leader. Shockwave will tell Soundwave that he originally joined the Decepticons back on Cybertron because he understood that the odds of victory were in Lord Megatron's favor. Out of pure survival, Shockwave deemed allying himself with Decepticons was the most logical course of action. But now, he tells Soundwave that he's not so certain. We cut back to Earth. As promised, Carly and Sparkplug take Spike out to dinner to celebrate his official promotion as a Nest agent. As Spike and Carly are getting ready for dinner and are about to leave their apartment, this scene will play out in a similar way to the opening scene with Sam and Carly from the original film, except we're going to modify it a bit. Instead of living in a mansion, Spike and Carly live together in a modest apartment in Massachusetts. Despite their unique professions, they're both just regular people. They're down-to-earth, average, blue-collared Joes. Remember, in my rewrite, Spike and his dad have always lived in Massachusetts, which is where MIT University is at. So that's how Spike is still able to meet Carly in this rewrite. Also, Autobot City is located in the Susquehanna Valley, which spreads out to New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. Even though Spike is required to live in the barracks at Autobot City when he's on duty, he immediately goes over to Carly's apartment as soon as he goes on leave. So right after his promotion, Linux allows Spike to go on leave with his family and celebrate. The flashback of Spike and Carly first meeting each other from the original film can be modified to take place at a car show instead of the White House. Spike could be at a local car show with his dad when he bumps into Carly, who is also a car buff, and they experience an instant magnetic attraction. Carly finds Spike's awkwardness kind of cute and endearing, and when he asks to buy her a drink, she agrees. Fast forward to the present day, where they're both teasing each other as they head out the door to go to dinner. While they're eating, Spike will voice his insecurities at feeling so incompetent next to the Autobots, and never being able to reach the bar that they have set as soldiers and protectors. And this is where Spike's character arc will start to surface. This time around, Spike will be the main protagonist of this Transformers movie, and his character arc will revolve around this film's main theme.
You may lose your faith in us, but never in yourselves.
Which basically sums up that even though others may disappoint you or let you down, never give up. Always strive for perseverance, because you can't always rely on others to see you through the end of the day. Sometimes, you can only count on yourself. So, the main theme of this film focuses primarily on the philosophies of perseverance and independence. And that's what Spike's character arc will focus on as well, making his journey in this film a coming-of-age story. Spike's lie in his character arc is that he is nothing without the Autobots. His ghost that supports this lie is that in the past, Spike has always had to rely on the Autobots to bail him out of trouble. Even as a soldier and government agent, Spike is just an insignificant speck of dust compared to these interstellar titans. No matter what he does, Spike can never hold the torch up to the mighty feats of Optimus, Ironhide, or even Bumblebee and Ratchet. He can never be a hero like them. He'll always live in their shadow. The want in Spike's arc is that he wants to be a defender like the Autobots. He wants to protect what's his. He's tired of being helpless, and he wants to feel like a capable contributor to the war effort by becoming a guardian of Earth. So that's why he joined Nest. But his need is that Spike must learn to believe in himself and overcome the idea that he cannot be successful without the Autobots. Spike has worth as an individual with or without the Autobots, and that is the truth that he must come to terms with if he is ever to become a protector in his own right. This next sequence will serve as both the climax of Act 1 and as our inciting incident. Back at Autobot City, Director Fairborn and the Autobots will try to sweat down Victor Drath and interrogate him for information, but when that doesn't work, Ironhide whispers a proposal to Fairborn, and she smiles. She locks Drath up in a room alone with Steeljaw as a scare tactic. The giant metal canine begins roughly playing with Drath by pouncing on him and tossing him around like a rag doll with his sharp metal teeth. Scared for his life, Drath confesses his secrets to Fairborn. He tells her that the Russian government secretly has an Autobot in custody that they plan on using as a hostage in case the Autobots ever turn on the humans. Furious at the betrayal, Optimus immediately plans a rescue mission to Russia. Fairborn tries to slow Optimus down and explain the protocol to him in situations like these, but he reminds her that the Cybertronians are practically an endangered species, and because Optimus is responsible for the well-being of every Autobot, he never leaves one of his own behind. He insists that if they wait for the green light from Fairborn's supervisors, that will only give the Russians time to relocate their prisoner to another hiding place. Director Fairborn will scramble and begin making phone calls as Optimus boards a shuttle and flies off to Russia with Ironhide, Ratchet, and Team Goldbug. En route to Russia, Optimus and his companions will speak to each other in their native language of Neo-Cybex, which the humans can't understand, and understandably makes them a bit suspicious. The Autobots will discuss the treachery of Russia, and even though Ironhide and Ratchet jump to conclusions and begin to question the trustworthiness of the entire human species, Optimus will become alert and keep his eye open, no longer willing to give humans the benefit of the doubt when it comes to honor. The Autobots and Team Goldbug crash a meeting that is taking place at the Russian White House in Moscow. Optimus calls out the Russian oligarchy for being liars and violating the trust that was established by the Alien Autobot Cooperation Act. Optimus demands that they release the Autobot prisoner to him, or else they will face his wrath. The bureaucrats try to weasel their way out of the situation, but they're intimidated into cooperation when the Autobots begin trashing the building and draw their weapons on the government officials. Russia's Nest ambassador, Alexei Vashkod, nervously escorts the Autobots and Team Goldbug to Chernobyl, where they've been keeping the Autobot locked up. This is the real reason why Chernobyl is quarantined from the rest of civilization, to keep the existence of the Autobot prisoner a secret. Chernobyl is more than just a historical disaster, it's a prison. Ambassador Vashkod and Team Goldbug are outfitted with hazmat suits to help protect them from the radiation of Chernobyl as they join the Autobots in retrieving their lost brother. Unbeknownst to the heroes, they are being monitored by Laserbeak, who reports the Autobots' location to Soundwave. In an underground bunker, the Autobots are baffled to find a stasis pod containing Sentinel Prime, whom they thought to be dead for centuries, as well as pillars to a space bridge. Laserbeak reports the uncovering of Sentinel Prime and the space bridge to the Decepticon War Council via intercom, but Starscream decides that preparing for the invasion is more important, and he tells Laserbeak to abort the recon mission. But Soundwave thinks that allowing the Autobots to add another Prime into their ranks is a fatal mistake, as it could drastically endanger their chances of conquering Earth. Shockwave agrees, and he decides that the most logical course of action is to intercept the Autobots, despite Starscream's instructions. We then see Shockwave leave the Nemesis and use his night vision to traverse through the shadowy surface of the moon's exterior. He approaches a crater where the driller lays curled up, resting. Shockwave awakens his pet and tells it that it is time to eat. We then see a manhole appear on the driller's back, and Shockwave climbs up into the hole, which serves as a cockpit that allows Shockwave to sit inside the beast as if it were a vehicle and see everything through the lenses of the driller through a computer monitor in front of him. Shockwave directs the driller to slither aboard one of the shuttles, frightening any nearby Decepticons and prompting them to flee from the giant monster as quickly as possible. From inside the driller, Shockwave commands a terrified pilot to fly them to Earth. We cut back to Russia. Shockwave's shuttle soars over Chernobyl, and after lowering the hatch, The driller topples out of the ship and free falls thousands of feet from the air into the ground, where it burrows beneath the cracked streets of Chernobyl. As the Autobots and Team Goldbug begin prepping Sentinel's pod for transport aboard their shuttle, the ground violently shakes out of nowhere, like there's a giant earthquake. The driller suddenly emerges from the ground and attacks them, devouring Ambassador Vashkot and seizing Sentinel Stasis pod in its tentacles as it slithers away from the Autobots. Optimus rushes outside and activates his semi-trailer, transforming it into a battle station. He grabs an Energon sword and a shield, chasing after the driller. Together, Optimus, Ironhide, and Ratchet combine their skills and work as a team to reclaim the pod. Throughout the fight, Ratchet, who is intimately familiar with Cybertronian biology, will call out the weak points in the driller's armor, guiding his comrades on where to strike. Shockwave is forced to retreat when his pet driller receives some major injuries, and Starscream orders the disobedient Shockwave over intercom to stop wasting time with the stupid Autobots and to return to base and help with the invasion.
Until next time, Optimus.
Growls Shockwave as he disappears into the Decepticon shuttle and takes off for the moon. Who the hell was that? That is Shockwave. I will explain more on our way back to base. But for now, Optimus will then put a hand over Sentinel's undamaged stasis pod. You're coming home with us, old friend. And that concludes Act 1 of my rewrite for Transformers 3. In the next video, which is Part 2, I'm going to be tackling Act 2. If you guys want to know when Part 2 comes out, then go ahead and subscribe so that you can keep up to date with this series. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you guys think of this rewrite so far. Till all are one.